In 1822, Anne Lister, an unmarried 31-year-old woman, wrote in her diary, speculating on the relationship status of two celebrities she had just visited. I cannot help thinking that surely it was not platonic. It excited in me a sort of peculiar interest tinged in melancholy. Anne Lister had long dreamed that she might live with a woman, as did these two famous women. They had lived together for decades, in defiance of all expectations of what a woman's life was for. Anne wanted to know if it were possible for women to be lovers and partners in life without male supervision. Anne wanted to find other lesbians. The story of Eleanor Butler and Sarah Ponsonby begins in the 1770s in Kilkenny, Ireland, the seat of Eleanor's wealthy family since medieval times. When she was a girl, Eleanor's family sent her to a French convent school. There she discovered her life's passion for learning anything about everything. Her sisters married wealthy men, but Eleanor declined all proposals and returned home to Butler Castle, superfluous, well-read, and bored. Meanwhile, just outside Kilkenny in Woodstock, lived a young orphan without an inheritance, Sarah Ponsonby. When she was 13, Sarah's guardian sent her to school in Kilkenny. The Butler family agreed to look after her. So began the lifelong friendship of Eleanor Butler and Sarah Ponsonby. Book reading filled their lives. They discussed literature, travel, politics, and their future. They longed for what they called the sweetness, a life free from obligations of wife and mother. After 5 years, Sarah was returned to Woodstock. She might have accepted a marriage, but because she was poor, none was offered. Then, her stepfather contemplated trading in his current wife for Sarah herself. Eleanor's mother had decided her daughter was too old for marriage and planned to send her back to France. Together, Eleanor and Sarah plotted to elope and escape their fate. Eleanor snuck out of the Butler Castle and joined Sarah at Woodstock. They ran away, but were quickly captured. After much family drama, they were allowed to leave Ireland together. With their devoted servant, Mary Carroll, they settled on a small farm called Plasnuid in Llangollen in North Wales. For 50 years, Eleanor and Sarah, who became famous as the ladies of Llangollen, lived the sweet life they had dreamed of. They created a peaceful and serene retreat with garden paths and a summer house above a rushing stream. They gathered stained glass from a ruined church and converted baptismal fonts into garden ornaments. They repurposed elaborately carved furniture into wall paneling. They explored the countryside and participated in village life. They continued their scholarly pursuits, reading and learning languages, and they became celebrities. Eleanor and Sarah were famous for living alone without men. Llangollen was on the ferry and coach route between Dublin and London. Travelers arrived in time for tea in the afternoon and stayed late into the night, drinking imported wine and discussing the news of the day. Their peers saw the pair as perfect friends, a wonder to behold. Plasnewid today is a museum. The walls still covered in fantastical wooden carvings and illuminated by glass mosaics of warm, fractured light. Anne Lister visited Plasnewid in July 1822. She recorded the visit in her diary, noting the beautiful house and gardens, and the library. At one point, she asked Sarah, "Are you classical?" Anne may have been making an oblique reference to Sappho, perhaps asking Sarah if she and Eleanor were lovers. Maybe Sarah misunderstood or didn't want to answer. "No," she said. "Thank God, from Latin and Greek, I'm free." As Anne left, Sarah gave her a rose. Anne kept it as a reminder of two mysterious women who lived as she hoped she could. The life of books, conversation, and hospitality continued until Eleanor died in 1829. Sarah followed her 2 years later. Sarah did not burn their journals and letters, but bequeathed them to a close family friend. She wanted us to know the story of their love and the life they lived. In a village cemetery near Llangollen is a monument similar to that of Eleanor and Sarah's. It is the grave of two women, Charlotte Andrew and Amelia Lawley. Little is known about Charlotte and Amelia, except that when these two women moved to Llangollen, they offered Eleanor and Sarah their friendship. Perhaps they sought out Eleanor and Sarah for the same reason Anne did. Eleanor rejected them, calling them lollies and trolleys. This insult mixes the childishness of sucking on candy with the notoriety of prostitution. Local historians call them impersonators. Charlotte and Amelia did not impersonate. They were women who lived independently of men and sought out other women like themselves. After Sarah's death, Charlotte and Amelia purchased Plasnewid and lived together amid the weird carvings and crazy mosaic windows for nearly as long as Eleanor and Sarah did. Local histories detail subsequent male owners of Plasnewid, but nothing about the other pair of women who lived there. If they kept a diary, it is lost. It's hard to imagine lesbians of our time leaving behind no trace. Our public lives are a matter of the historical record. Anne Lister's family home of Shibden Hall is now also a museum. We know she thought her life was worth recording and reflecting on. The full story of her life was not known until her diaries were made available and her cipher decoded in the 1980s. Her story had been hidden for almost 200 years. Among the 5 million words Anne wrote in her diaries, the most quoted passage is where she came out to herself. "I love and only love the fair sex, and thus beloved by them in turn, my heart revolts from any other love than theirs." It wasn't just that she loved women, but that they loved her back. About 10 years after meeting the ladies of Llangollen, Anne Lister and a neighbor, Anne Walker, made a home together in Shibden Hall. Anne Walker's family were wealthy merchants. When her father and brother died, she was left with a fortune large enough that her relatives wanted to control it. She fought them off. Their relationship lasted nearly 10 years, and their diaries record their days of devotion, care, and adventure. Anne Walker's wealth allowed Anne Lister to invest in a coal mine. On a cobblestone path from Halifax over Beacon Hill to Shibden Hall, you can still see the mine's ventilation tower, a lasting monument to their love. After Anne's death in 1840, her grave's original location inside Halifax Minster was lost, the gravestone damaged during long ago church renovations. The remnant is on display, as is the font where she was baptized, amid the many lovely windows and relics of Halifax Minster. Anne Walker is remembered with a plaque resting near the demolished old St. Matthew's Church at Lightcliffe, not far from Shibden Hall. When Anne Lister suddenly fell ill and died in 1840, she and Anne Walker were traveling near the eastern Black Sea in Georgia, known in ancient times as Colchis. And Colchis is a mythological homeland of Amazons. Perhaps they were looking for them, looking for women who lived independently from men. Women who live independently have always existed, even when their diaries are lost. The love, devotion, and joy found between women is why women like Eleanor and Sarah, Anne and Anne, Charlotte and Amelia defied their fathers and lived their lives as they wished. If they could speak to us now, they might say, "Love women, and let that love carry you into the life you please, and keep a diary."